The coaching paradigm. Let me introduce you to what I believe is the next shift in coaching. Coaching has been around for a long, long time, but what I will tell you is that coaching in corporate America continues to be a battle. How do we get our managers to coach? Now, we all know that the number one thing we hear is, well, I don't have time, I'm wearing a lot of hats. But something's occurring. More and more companies are training their managers to coach. We're in that business. But I think there's a new paradigm shift occurring. The shift that's occurring isn't just a training issue. It's an application issue. It's a conversational piece issue. It's about applying it back in the real world. Certainly not rocket science, right? But what I will tell you is we, not only as providers, but also internally, training departments and HR departments, we need to adopt this new paradigm shift. Now, what is that? The new paradigm shift is the following. We have 3 levels of coaching in terms of how we support our managers. First of all, they battle foundational issues. I'm going to get to that in a second. Situationally, they all have unique situations, whether it's from the unique veteran employee who's near retirement to the millennial who wants to be promoted by next Tuesday, or the 2 people who are a top talent who can't stand to be in the same room together. Those are situations that each manager in corporate America deals with. Now, the real world. In the real world, we have people who are in certain types of industries or certain type of job types that they have very specific things they need to accomplish in their real world. So a sales director has very different real world challenges than a customer service call center manager for an electric company. So all of these present coaching challenges. So let me walk you through what I think is going to be our next shift. The foundational challenges. Now, before I get into where I got these 9 challenges, let me say these are at the foundation of people's strengths and areas of opportunity to improve. These 9 areas are the most 9 commonly used phrases or words in our Coach the Coach service. So at Progress Coaching, we provide 12 months of our initial program of monthly Coach the Coach, where managers tell us who they're coaching, what they're coaching their team to, what's working, what's not working, and what's the challenge. These are the most common things that have been mentioned. So, attitude, motivation, someone who is resistant to feedback, do they feel connected to the job or the place of employment? What are their relationships like in the workplace? Do they feel like they're progressing in their career? Do they just typically by nature lack confidence? Are they not engaged? Self-development. Are they truly invested in their own careers? These are the most common things that we found out. Now, how do we have a conversation around this? Let's say, and I'm going to give you a few examples here in a minute, we have someone who by nature is just not very confident. They don't seek change. They're resistant to change. They're a good employee, but you need them to make customer follow-up calls. That's a wicked combination. Someone who inherently demonstrates a lack of confidence, which many people do, by the way. Now they got to get on this thing called the phone, where there's a lot of resistance. So what are we coaching to? Just the ability to make the phone calls? Or do we also have to address a person's ability to be confident when doing so? The number 2 challenge of managers, handling conflict. Confronting these things. Confronting is nothing more than building awareness of where somebody has an opportunity to improve. It's not about bloodshed or violence or anger or profanity. It's about giving someone an opportunity to improve. The number 1 opportunity we all have is to coach to the foundational and targeted areas together. In our course called Progress Coaching, we talk about something called double-based conversations. So let's say we have somebody who has a very resistant attitude and they have to handle price objections. So obviously we're talking about a salesperson. What do we do with this? How do we handle this? If we just sit down and we say, Charlie, you got to handle price objections, here are the steps you need to take, and his attitude is negative, what do you think he's going to do? Hug you, kiss you, embrace you, and say, thanks for the revelation? No. They've got the walls built up. He's already resistant. So if you don't address in the red the foundational area of opportunity to improve, the targeted areas will always have fractional success. So for example, I might say, so Charlie, how do you think you could positively adopt our new price objection handling sequence, and what could we do together to really pursue that in a really worthwhile, enthusiastic way? That's an opposite insertion question. I inserted the desired behavior I want Charlie to possess related to his attitude, but specific to handling price objections. Our second example. Let's say we have someone who's just monotone, lacking perception, motivation, or lack of energy on the phone, but all of a sudden we have an increase in angry customers. Are we honestly going to sit down with that person and say, come on, you've got to handle those angry customers, and by the way, be enthusiastic? If we could just tell people that simplistically, wouldn't it make our lives easier? So what do? So with someone who's lacking motivation, we could use a rating question. So Susie, when you're on the phone, honestly, rate yourself. 6, you're enthusiastic, you've got conviction, you use voice, tone, fluctuation, you insert positive adjectives every single phone call. Or 1, you're a little bit drawl and monotone and maybe even perceived as disinterested, whether that's your intent. Where would you rate yourself? Guess where she's going? She's going to go right in the middle. That's why you always ask an even number rating question. Well, I'm about a 2 or 3 or maybe a 3 or 4. Okay, great. Their response is inconsequential. The next step is the value. Well, Susie, what do we need to do to move in the direction of a 6? Quite frankly, in a short period of time? And how do you think we could go about doing that with also the use of positive adjectives when you're talking to your customers when they happen to be angry? That question will frame out her response to move in the right direction. Then when we see these things, much like the first example, we don't just facilitate the change and ignore them. No, then we got to recognize and nurture them. Third example, you've got an operations employee, someone who doesn't deal with customers. They've been at the company a long time, but quite frankly, they don't work well with others. Quite frankly, you've had some maybe complaints of other departmental leaders complaining about this person. What do? How do you handle this? And the person's resistant to feedback. They're stuck in their ways. So I'm going to teach you something called a self-actualized question. So let's say we're sitting down with an employee, Tom, and say, Tom, I think we have a wonderful opportunity. Would you agree or disagree that we'd be a lot happier if we worked with that other department more successfully? Now that question's rhetorical. You'll probably nod and say, well, yeah. Okay, great. When I think about that, what do you think we could do as a team successfully to embrace and engage with that other department? And also specific to you, what do you think you could do to specifically and successfully engage with them, maybe even in a more thoughtful, proactive manner? Now, first you notice I went to the team. That's the deflection. And when he starts answering positively, I can say, well, what do you think you could do? And those things start the conversation. I hope I don't come off arrogant. This is where managers struggle. If they don't know how to have the conversation, what are they going to do? Bob, got to handle price objections. Julie, you got to be motivated on the phone. We just start telling people. If that worked, we wouldn't have a training or coaching industry. Now, let me teach you something else that I think is kind of cool. So I'm going to go back to our customer service agent who's monotone, lacking motivation, and you're going to have a conversation. We call this SWOT-based coaching. So the first thing I'm going to teach you is something called dovetailing. The second thing I'm going to teach you is something called scaling, where you go across the SWOT acronym. SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Now you see in the black in the lower right, WIFT. WIFT stands for what's in it for them. So let's say I'm talking to Julie, our customer service agent, and I say, Julie, I think we have a wonderful opportunity. And one of the things I love about working with you is you're a veteran, you know the systems, you're really good tactically, your administrative and organizational skills are off the charts, and I love that. I think about combining that with a more energetic, fun, engaging voice on the phone, especially with angry customers. And I think about combining all of those in a bucket of strengths. What's going through your mind? So what I did is I dovetailed from strengths to weaknesses. See, when we address weaknesses, people engage 8 times more than we just address weaknesses alone or provide constructive feedback. Now, if I were to scale, I might say, Julie, here are all the things that I love about you. And I think about combining that with a more energetic tone and really proactive use of adjectives on the phone. What opportunities do you think that will afford you? What threats do you think that might mitigate? And those are 2 examples of where I scaled, but I also combined it and applied it to what's in it for her. Let me know your thoughts on this. Send me an email. I hope you enjoyed this lesson. I think the coaching paradigm shift is just starting. I don't think it's just a training issue anymore. I think it's an assessment. So if you like our 9 foundational areas, we have an assessment platform built around that. Send me an email if you're interested in learning about it. Number 2, I think we have to build conversation pieces. Our next coaching book coming out is called Conversation Pieces. But I think we really have to help managers deal with their foundational challenges so they can have situational and real-world success. Send me an email. Let me know what your thoughts are on this lesson. Thanks.